Yo. What it do, chicken stew, y'all? It's the Copper Color King. We back in this bad boy with some more good content, man. Back in this bad boy with another banger. Had to do some research to come with this one, man. I'm not even gonna lie. Watching me a nice little TikTok video on my TikTok feed. You know TikTok TikTok and Twitter, or X, is where you'll find some of the most interesting information. You'll find some of the most craziest information. TikTok, X, and of course our best friend Google. But yeah, so I'm scrolling on TikTok and I stumble across a video that talks about this group back in Philadelphia in the late 1970s, early 1980s, called Move, headed by this brother named John Africa, or shall I say, because we got his real name, Vincent Leaphart, right? Who changed his name to John Africa. Vincent Leaphart changed his name to John Africa. I had to say that one twice because it's extremely interesting to me to know, why would this brother change his name from Vincent Leaphart to John Africa? What it do, Chicken Stew, my brother? Milestone Thoughts in the building, man. Stay tuned for this one, bro. We about to drop a bomb. You probably even already knew about it, but I'm learning myself about it, so I want to share this information with the masses. Like, it's very, very important. I want people to understand, like, these groups and organizations that was created to support quote unquote black people back in the 1980s, 70s, 60s and stuff like that. A lot of them didn't, it didn't really benefit the livelihoods of a lot of black people, right? A lot of it was destructive to the black community. And upon my research, I learned that this Move organization, or this cult called Move, headed by this brother named John Africa, was one of those organizations that, if you ask me, didn't really represent black people on a greater scale. It was a representation of us living at our poorest, right? And also supporting that poor living, like unsanitary living conditions, sleeping with rats and dogs, and eating garbage, collecting garbage, leaving it on the front yard, right? Having bang outs with the police, broad day, waking people up with a bullhorn, disrupting the peace. That's my opinion. But like I said, this brother, he changed his name from Vincent Leaphart to John Africa. And that was one of the most interesting things to me about this whole situation overall, right? His mother and father, neither of them have the last name Africa in their name. So it's obvious that this man's organization or group was led by some teachings that suppose that we are, or that we as black people in America come from Africa, or have originated in Africa, or have ancestral roots in Africa, right? Neither of his parents is from Africa, right? That's the most interesting part about it. But anywho, this Move organization, man, what did they do? Matter of fact, before we even get into that, let's just talk about John Africa real quick, right? Vincent Leaphart. And for those who are tuned in on TikTok, YouTube, man, make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. Click that notification bell to stay up to date on all content. And stay plugged in like an extension cord. It's the Copper Colored King. I apologize for the name change too. I was doing something with my Google account, and it ended up changing the name across all my platforms. Like, we still Copper Colored on this side, but I got something fire with the Ferocious Sun coming real soon. So stay in tune for that, man, real quick, yo. But like I said, so yeah, brother was the founder of Move, a Philadelphia-based predominantly black organization, active from the early 1970s and still active, which means they're possibly active up until this day. He and his followers were killed at a residential home which served as the headquarters of Move in a fire after the Philadelphia Police Dept bombed a house with C4 explosives and deliberately let the fire rage until it was out of control, following a standoff and firefight between Move and police. Straight up Armageddon in our country, right? And I'm not going to only speak down on John Africa and his cultish ways or his cultish style of living. If you ask me, the police were responsible for a lot of these things that happened around this time, because at this point, black people were tired of living in such conditions, being beaten or abused or whatever rhetoric they were promoting around that time. Black people just weren't having it. And you had certain groups of black folks that was like, yo, we got to bank out. And you had certain groups of black folks that just really wanted to keep the peace. This brother John Africa disturbed a lot of communities. People didn't want him around, right? Folks didn't want him around because they felt that type of lifestyle wasn't required to promote a healthy living for black people. They say John Africa used to come outside, him and his followers come outside with the bullhorns and pressure people to go to City Hall and speak on their behalf so that they could free their people. And John Africa told these civilized, regular, everyday black Americans that if they did not fall in, that they would abuse them like that every single day. So big ups to the move, man. That's how you support the black community, right? You come outside with a bullhorn and you just start disturbing the peace and waking everybody up from their sleep. The brothers that got to go to work in the morning and whatnot. And then big ups to Philadelphia Police, man, for making black people feel so oppressed that they literally have to follow the teachings of a man who I would claim or deem to be incompetent or insane. Insane. Because for you to gather people and have them follow behind some of your teachings and have them living in these conditions, there's no way you can claim to be the savior of the black people, of the black civilized, the black community in America. I'll be damned if a brother tell me that I gotta sleep outside with roaches and dogs and I gotta collect garbage because it's the nature's way of living. Yeah, I'm one clean brother. I promise you that. I'll tell you, kiss my ass real quick. Real quick. So this brother, man, they ain't do, I mean, you feel me, according to my research and my personal feelings included, I feel like he really wasn't one of them folks though, right? But just to go a little bit deeper into this whole bombing, check this out, right? So I got the clip and we're gonna be going into this, just listening to what other people at that time had to say. Some people are representative of the council seat in Philadelphia, governors, but like police agents and folks like that. Other black folks, just listen to what they got to say about this stuff. Check this out.
Use the
right, this is the Move Coat, 1985. You can find this video right here on YouTube.
Helicopter to drop the explosive?
Yes, sir.
Did he then call the mayor?
He did.
Did you tell the mayor that it was going to be dropped from a helicopter?
I did.
And you recall yesterday that he testified that his recollection differed?
Yes.
Are you positive you told him that it was going to be dropped from a helicopter?
I'm positive.
Director Brooks' understanding of that conversation differs from mine somewhat in that he recalls having said to me that they were going to use a helicopter to do this. That is not my recollection.
This is live footage of the actual bombing.
At 5:27 p.m., without warning moved, a bomb containing powerful military explosives was dropped. Expecting Move to flee, police stakeout teams took up positions in the alley behind the house.
T. O'Brien from Channel 3 came in. She said, "Lucian, what's going on?" So, well, we've got an impasse. Nothing. She said, "Oh, no, Lucian, we just heard an explosion out there." We turned on this television here, and we saw the helicopter circling. We saw the fella drop the bomb, and boom. I stood there and watched, and at first, while I was concerned, I felt that they had this thing under control, and they figured, well, maybe they're trying to smoke them out. They figured if enough smoke filled up the house that they would run out in the street and they would probably capture them. Then after a while, we saw the fire. We went down, we saw the mayor. And he was coming out of his office, and I said, hey, he said, everything's under control. He said, we have it under control. Don't worry about it. Everything's all right.
There was still no sign that Move would leave the house.
Now, the crazy thing behind this, right, is that these Move members was coming outside with rifles, carbines, pistols, revolvers, wild different tools, openly brandishing guns in front of the people, in front of the public, in front of the kids, having bang-outs with the police. Right, there's even one story that states that one of the members, right, they all their last names was Africa. Right, all of they converted their last names to Africa. Right, this is how you know this is a cult. This is a cult. One story goes that they had a bang out and 5 cops got shot. John Africa says the cops shot their own friends. The cops say that the members of Home let off the first shots. 1 cop died. Right, 1 cop died, but it was never proven, like the facts never came out on who actually killed the cop, right? That story disappeared, right? But it was, they blamed John Africa. He got arrested for it, and a bunch of his other members, and the Philadelphia Police Department started applying real hardcore pressure on these brothers. And why I can't blame them is because I don't condone violence, bro. Like, that's not something that black people in America should be on. I've never seen things from that perspective. And what we learned, right? We learned that in the 1800s, the Democrats was the ones pushing race wars on black and white people to get us to divide so that they could conquer us whole as a nation. I don't really know the political situation in Philadelphia at the time, and I'm not going to do the research. But one thing I will say is that they let these things go down, right? They let this stuff pop off until the point to where they had to swoop in on a helicopter, drop a whole C4 explosive in the bunker, blow it up, and kill a good amount of people, and it was only a good amount of survivors. But then again, on the flip side, you had this brother here had his people up in guns in people's faces. Like a double-edged sword. Really, that's how you break down the black community. We won't know who to follow because we being misled from both directions. They are not here to protect us, and the Move, they not here for our overall well-being. This is a cult. Let's learn a little bit more about this John Africa. So he was born Vincent Leaphart on July 26 in the Montua neighborhood of West Philadelphia. All right, real quick. Montua was a neighborhood that was purchased from the Lenape Indian tribe in 1677 by William Warner. In 1692, a young Welsh carpenter, William Powell, opened a ferry over the Schuylkill Hill River at the foot of the present Spring Garden, blah, 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 blah. Right, this was Lenape land. This was Lenape Indian land. More copper-colored people. So, this brother, 1931, right, born in this neighborhood, we just learned, what did we learn about Montua? The Welsh purchased this neighborhood. The Welsh was mixing in with the tribesmen them. Right? The Welsh and the tribesmen them, they was starting families together and whatnot. And the Lenape Indians and whatnot. These is facts. What are you talking about? Man, what is this guy talking about? I don't explain yourself, dude. What are you talking about? We doing the research right now. What are you talking about? Piss off. Anyway, I don't know what you like. You gotta explain yourself, brother. Part of this neighborhood was purchased from the Lenape. This was Lenape land, right? This was a hard-working African-American, a hard-working class African-American city or area or just body of land, however we want to call it, man. And it was recently gentrified. Now look at that. So this brother changing his name to John Africa, right, could be a descendant of a Welshman and a native, right? A Welshman and a native, right? So enough about Montua. This is why I say Welshman and a native. His father's name was Frederick Leaphart, right? Where does the name Leaphart come from? All right, German Leopold, right? This is the Leaphart is the Americanized form of the German Leaphart. So we already know the Welshmen brought this area, right? So we had mad different peoples moving in and out, copper-colored folks, Europeans and all that. So that's Pops, right? His Pops was a handyman, while his mother, Lenny Mae, right? They're gonna say, oh, we doing the research right now, big dog. What you talking about? I'm not gonna go into the stuff that don't particular, like, you know, is not centered on what we talking about. So I just want to stay on topic. And like I said, I mean, no disrespect by the piss off, but I don't need nobody disturbing this research here, right here. Like the one we doing actively in front of our face. We got to stay focused. All right, so yeah. Pops was a handyman. Mom's Duke name was Lenny Mae, right? She was a homemaker, and he was one of 10 children. Mom's died in her 40s, and Vincent Leaphart at the time blamed the hospital for her death. As a child, he was painfully thin and underweight, and he was transferred to a school for slow learners to learn simple trades. He continued to struggle in school and dropped out at age 16. The brother also served in the Korean War. He served over a year in the infantry unit, and he would later remark on the contrast between the sunrise over the Korean mountains and the ugly gunfire of war. So the brother had shell shock. You know, the brother had PTSD, right? The brother served in these wars, right? And for those who know, the Korean War was one of them wars, right? That was tearing black men apart, right? Why were we out there? Most folks won't even know why were we out there, right? There was no real reason for black men at the time to serve in the Korean War. Let's add another interesting fact on top of this brother's life, right? His mom Dukes passed away, so he was already traumatized. Right, he was already traumatized. On top of that, they said he was a slow learner. So these are just some of the factors that probably play into his character, into who he is as an individual. Why do I mention those things? Well, it's very important. You got to understand a person's background to understand why they do certain things in life, right? Why they act the way they act. Why they are the way they are. You know, you got to understand a person's background. Like, what caused you to be this way? And, you know, after serving in the war, you know, a lot of brothers come home, they don't be the same, right? They don't be the same. Sometimes gun smoke is all you know. Now, we talking about the 1970s and 80s here now. One of the worst eras. Thank you, bro. With the 1970s and 80s, that was a dangerous time in America. Right? Most of the brothers coming home from these wars and whatnot were suffering. They were suffering. And we didn't have no outlets. Our biggest outlet was the crack, was the drugs. So it just makes me think like, all right, what type of brother was these people following, right? Did he self-educate himself, right? Did he really sit amongst scholars or amongst people who really wanted change, right? Or did he just outright come out and say, you know what? We're going to start this group. We're going to start living like bums. And we're going to become rebellious against the system. Pretty much. That's pretty much what that was. right? So look, it says, right, he had a wife, Dorothy Clark. They got married. She described their marriage as ordinary and friends. As ordinary, and friends described Leaphart as level-headed and dependable. Also knowing that Dorothy would help him with his reading and writing skills. So he received help with his reading and writing from his spouse. He moved to Powelltown, a polyglot neighborhood in West Philadelphia, close to the University of Pennsylvania Community Housing Corporation. Period. In which members pooled money together to buy a handful of buildings to live in with an idea to rebel against an oppressive society that bulldozed homes to make way to build more academic housing. Although the area had large majority of academic residents, Leaphart was seen as eccentric yet tolerable as the area was diverse. Faced with foreclosure, the co-op stepped in and purchased his home so he could remain living there. In 1972, Leaphart changed his name to John Africa to represent the continent where life began. See, as we can see, right? Let's see. This takes us to another article, right? So what can we learn from that? Or what can we learn from this article? Let's just see, right? Because now he's saying he's just changing his name basically to represent where the origin, the origins of man. It says it is difficult to identify the moment at which MOVE was officially created, but it's clear that the philosophy behind the group comes from a man named John Africa. Africa was born with the name Vincent. He changed his name to John Africa to represent the continent where life began. Right? So according to him, he was born on this outer Africa theory, black people come from Africa, and that, we gotta live like monkeys and uncivilized. This is my assumption. I'm just saying, because how people were living under this, with this organized, it was disgusting, bro. It was nasty. Now, you can't have kids living in them conditions and then expecting them to overachieve in life. You can't have them around the pre-notes to war and expect them to overachieve in life. Granted, we are oppressed in our own country, but there's different ways at this time, especially, to go about it. Different ways. Like, we learned so much from Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, the BDs, the GDs, Bloods, Crips, even though that probably was much later. But many of the other gangs that were out there, we learned so much. And I'm just saying, man, like, I don't know. That's why I'm just not in support of what he had going on, though. But look, folks even labeled him as mentally retarded and functionally illiterate. But in spite of this, he managed to attract a number of people from the Philadelphia area who were willing to believe in his ideologies. One of these disciples of John Africa was Donald Glassy, a graduate of nearby University of Pennsylvania. Glassy was so fascinated by Africa's teachings that he volunteered to write and compile Africa's thoughts into a book. Right? He put it into a book, so they created a manifesto. Right? The teachings of John Africa. Right? This is how you spread blasphemy, right? Idol worship, and many of the other things that exist, in this very treacherous world that we live in. Right? This is where you start spreading blasphemy. Like, listen, I know this is another black man, but we're not about to sit here and follow somebody just because he like, yo, we got to start living close to nature. Granted, that comes with probably eating healthy, but not with garbage, not being like, we're going to get into it. I'm going to just hold it down, right? So real quick, I want to see if we could figure out who Donald Glassy is, or if he even was a black man. Right? Who was Donald Glassy? We'll probably find out from the video. Right? But anywho, going back into his origins. So, yeah. So, he managed to attract people who believed in his ideologies. He met this brother named Donald Glassy, who made his teachings into a manifesto. Excuse me, y'all. The notes were eventually the basis of a document called the Guidelines. What's this? What's the Guidelines? Okay. This is from a book about the MOVE organization. Ooh, spicy. Definitely have to get that. Right, so yeah, so now look, they created a document, the Guidelines, to which, with Glassy, Africa moved his organization to a house on Pearl Street in West Philadelphia. After parting ways with Glassy due to differing ideology, Africa made the Guidelines the primary source for his teachings and the principles of MOVE, founded in 1972 as the Christian Movement for Life. The Guidelines articulated teachings such as strict vegetarianism and inherent value of all living things, including pests like rats, roaches, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, they accepted members regardless of their past and taught lessons on corruption, racism, and the need for individuality in an increasingly technological society. Now, we got to remember, corruption may be a thing, but racism is just propaganda. Racism is just propaganda. Right? That's only something that will mentally hold you back, because look, there's black folks that's gonna say it, that they didn't want this stuff around. They were pretty fine without it. So obvious that racism wasn't hurting everybody. Right? So the organization protested animal cruelty in zoos, the education system, which I agree with, but at that time, it was a little different, and police brutality. Consequently, the police engaged in heavy surveillance around members of MOVE. According to Let the Fire Burn, a documentary released in 2013, a member of the Philadelphia Police revealed that between 1972 and 78, 193 arrests of MOVE members and 93 subsequent court cases occurred. Brother, you got to explain yourself, brother. We're not talking about the 50s and the 60s. We're not talking about the 50s and the 60s. Look, just listen, watch, learn. Watch this, right? So, right, so on August 8th, 1978, the Philadelphia police attempted to evict the MOVE organization from their home on Pearl Street. A standoff occurred, resulting in the eventual shootout and the death of one police officer, James J. Ramp. This is the situation I was talking about, as well as several injuries. 9 MOVE members were arrested and the organization was removed from their home on Pearl Street. The home was immediately demolished and the MOVE 9 were convicted over the police officer's death. Merle Africa and Phil Africa died in the Pennsylvania prison system. The last of the remaining members were released in February 2020. So that's just a synopsis of what happened. So now let's look at what other people had to say about the situation. This comes from an article, right, where they break the entire event down into like 3 phases, right? But one part that stood out to me was this part right here, right? It states, it says, right, it began in the early 1970s as a non-violent, predominantly black countercultural activist group. It originally called itself the Movement, later shortened to MOVE. Its founder, John Africa, was the philosophical leader. He advocated an anti-technology approach, a downside for our community, right? Because how are we going to get ahead if we're not understanding technology in a world that's steadily increasing, right? Granted, it's great to live off the grid. I think that's a great idea. But living off the grid and living like a slum is 2 different things. Check this out. He advocated an anti-technology approach, respect for animal life and communal living. Its members took on the surname Africa to express their sense of communal family living. MOVE is often labeled as an urban, back-to-nature, primitivist group. Primitivist group. Primitivist group. To say primitive, primitive is like saying like ape, like primates, right? I'm just saying. We're not talking about the art. Primitive. Why you want us to live like apes? Right? You're going back on us with the outer Africa theory. It's all right, sis. We just started. We just started cooking up. We here. But he's saying that they want to go back to a primitive style of living. Living like monkeys. Outer Africa theory does not apply to black people in America because a lot of us don't come from Africa. So why, even with this brother, whose parents may have ancestry with the Lenape Indian tribe of the land, would want to change his name back to Africa? Right? Probably listening to the teachings of these radicals, right? These radicals were the only folks promoting this stuff. Right? It's a radical lifestyle. Very radical. So look what they said. In the mid-1970s, MOVE established a headquarters in Powhatown Village, an integrated New Left section of Philadelphia. There, they disrupted community meetings with lengthy harangues based on the teachings of John Africa. Their primitivism included recycling garbage by throwing it in their yard. Respect for animal life included rats and stray dogs, right? We love the dogs, but the rats, my boy, is crazy. They constantly use profanities and aggressive confrontational language. These traits sparked a major lifestyle conflict with the neighborhood. The neighborhood, they was not jacking him. I mean, bro, I'm not gonna lie, depending on how they kept their dreads or they locks, like, you gotta understand, everything comes with being sanitary. Like, the tribesmen in America, our ancestors, and I'm assuming you can agree with me on this, we kept ourselves clean, right? This is why we were the ones who introduced essential oils and lard and tallow soap, like true soaps. We the ones who introduced shea butter, coconut oil, and all of that to the folks over here, to the people who invaded and came over here, because we lived closest to nature. But there was a way that you upkept yourself, right? Like you just said, right? Folks should not have been composting in their gardens, increasing the rat problems. Although compost is not always a bad thing either, because that's how you sometimes start your own agriculture journey. But it's a way you go about it. You don't just throw it in your front lawn. At all times, bro. All times. Like my pops, bloodborne, he's him. Real Niji, he's him. Right? He will not tolerate no type of uncleanliness. That comes from grandma. Grandma, real right Niji. So I'm just saying, right? How can you tell people to live like that, but then at the same time say you're promoting in the overall development and wellness of black people, right? You're promoting that we're constantly being abused and whatnot, but however, there's people in the area that can attest to that and say that that's not entirely true. So they was beefing with the police. OD, right? A pivotal event was in April 1976, a clash between MOVE and the police in which 3 MOVE leaders were convicted and imprisoned. They referred to them as political prisoners, and their release from prison became MOVE's main concern. This is why they was outside with the bullhorn, right? Telling people, like, putting pressure on people like, yo, advocate for us or we're gonna, like, you know, make a lot of noise and disturb the community. We don't even like when gang members do stuff like that today. And some of them gang members be our homies, and I know we try to tell them, like, bro, you gotta turn over a new leaf because what you doing ain't right. What it do, chicken stew, sis? Come on. So yeah, the stages of conflict, you know, it happened in 4 phases, excuse me. Right? It involved ongoing clashes with the police, neighbors, and courts. That's phase 1. Phase 2 involved a heavy police presence at MOVE headquarters. Police established a 24-hour presence to arrest MOVE members if they left their headquarters. Phase 3 was an attempt to evict MOVE from its headquarters by blockading it to starve them out. Phase 4 was an attempt to evict MOVE using armed force and the shootout. They had a shootout. Right, this is the 1980s at the time. They had a full-blown bang out right in West Philadelphia, traumatizing all of the children in the area. Right? So it says most of the interveners interviewed stated that the parties to the 1978 confrontation were MOVE in the city. In fact, the parties were much more complex. One set was MOVE in the Powhatan neighborhood. The neighborhood, in turn, was divided in its response. Some advocated police intervention, while others insisted the problem should be settled in the community. A third faction sought to reconcile the first two. MOVE's conflict within the city involved many sub-parties. To MOVE, Mayor Rizzo represented the law and order rule they opposed, and the police department was continually in confrontation with the activist group. The department itself was split between the highly professional trained civil disturbances squad, and where did I stop at? Trained civil disturbance squad and the rank and file police, who were often called Rizzo's thugs. As confrontations with the rank and file evolved, MOVE came into confrontation with the courts. It used them as a vehicle to dramatize its beliefs and issues. MOVE's fundamental issue involved the city and courts, and more specifically, freedom for its 3 political prisoners. The merger of issues. In phase 1, these issues initially moved on separate tracks. For instance, there were negotiations between MOVE and its neighbors. However, in May 1977, MOVE, in response to another law enforcement incident, dramatically appeared on the porch of their barricaded headquarters wearing military uniforms and carrying weapons. Alarmed residents called the police, who responded by laying siege to the house. After a tense initial confrontation, the city vowed to maintain a massive police presence and arrest any MOVE member who left the headquarters, right? Check it. The neighbors is calling the cops on these dudes. The neighbors is calling the cops like, yo, y'all gotta come do something about this. They disturbing the peace. They outside on their porches with guns and all of that and whatnot. Right? Their neighbors are other black people. They just told us that these neighborhoods were working class black neighborhoods. Right? These were other black people saying, yo, put an end to this. What are they doing? They look silly. Phase 2, bringing in the police, already a party to the conflict, as a third-party intervener transformed the conflict in issues. The issue of police presence outweighed all others. Rather than focus on their conflict with MOVE, the neighbors argued with each other over whether the police presence was appropriate. A major faction of the New Left neighborhood generally opposed police intervention. Right? Divide and conquer. They had people divided all over the place. All over the place. This is why I say, on behalf of the police, right, and this organization, it was like a plot to work together to just screw up the community even more. These organizations, not always beneficial for black people, man. We all know the cops ain't for us, right? We all know that. But just know, them folks that's your skin color too, they just as crazy as the cops. Right? They just as crazy as the cops. They have folks divided all over the place. Although MOVE seemed to have a little incentive to negotiate with the neighbors at this stage, there is some evidence they made at least one agreement. Their composting agreement was that the neighbors approached MOVE about the garbage in their yard. They suggested if MOVE were serious about recycling, then they can do it more efficiently by composting. Composting, like I said, sometimes there's a way to do it. That would also meet the neighbors' needs by reducing the odor in vermin food, right? The block stank. It was rats all over the place. This example of needs-based bargain resulted in wins for both sides. Although Move apparently lived up to that agreement, the Powhatan people interviewed did not remember it. They were so focused on the life and death issues of the massive police presence, they did not notice an environmental agreement that may have worked. Right? The Interpool. An example of early mediation intervention was given by Father Paul Washington, an active black minister. He knew the Move leadership and had helped them visit their incarcerated members. Move sympathizers called him in during phase 2. Move was parading on their porch with guns, and a tense confrontation with police was in progress. Washington claimed both sides down and got Move to back into their house to talk. They were upset because they had heard one of their members who was recently arrested had been beaten by the police. Washington shuttled between Move and the police commissioner. He received assurances from the police that no beating had taken place. Right? Very important. No beating had taken place. I mean, at the end of the day, bro, it's not even that they putting these groups before us, right? When they are put before us and set before us, they're not created to benefit us in any way, shape, or form in any way. Right? It's all created to mislead. Right? They had us screwed up when he changed his name to Africa and adopted a primitive lifestyle. You're telling people that it's okay to live like monkeys. Granted, they probably did things that helped some people. But when you look at the facts, like the things we are reading right now, those alone tell us how disgusting, right? Alone, right? Just a odor and vermin running around because y'all got y'all garbage just sitting out in the yard. We will tell our neighbors off about that today. Quick. We would probably call 311. That's just facts. So, with that being said, right? They said nobody got beat. Cops ain't beat nobody. They negotiated an agreement that if the police brought the arrested member to Move headquarters to show he was injured, Move would relinquish its arms. On his final visit to confirm the agreement, Delbert Africa, Move's negotiator, insisted they would only turn in their guns if their colleagues were released. Washington concluded that negotiations with Move were impossible because they would keep escalating the stakes, provoking. Delbert Africa, Move's negotiator, in this incident confirmed Washington's analysis, but added a missing piece. He said Washington was right. Move would keep escalating the stakes until someone paid attention to their basic concern. That is, as long as their fundamental issue, freeing the political prisoners, is being ignored, Move would not rest. Joel Todd. A major intervener was young white attorney Joel Todd. He had represented Jerry Africa, one of the imprisoned political prisoners, in his trial and became friendly with the group. He was well connected with the city's political structure. By October of 1977, the Phase 2 standoff was 4 months old. Costs were mounting for both sides, and Move supporters asked Todd to help them reach a settlement. Todd agreed. His goal was to avoid violence, right? The white man, Joel Todd, wanted to avoid violence. You had the white man even saying, yo, we don't need to do this. Y'all don't need to do this. He saw the conflict as between Move and the city and felt neighborhood was not a party. He began carrying messages back and forth between the Move headquarters and the city's manager's office. He quickly defined each side's primary issue. Move wanted release of its political prisoners. The city wanted a face-saving way out of the crisis, preferably by moving Move from the neighborhood. Todd began to build an agreement with the following terms. MOVE members would submit to orderly arrest procedures concerning the outstanding weapons and riot charges, right? Of course, it's obvious. Procedures would allow witnesses to be present to assure that MOVE members would not be brutalized, right? They said, okay, the people could come and witness us lock folks up. Everybody could see this happening in real time. So that way we reassure the folks that nobody is being beaten, right? Because John Africa and them folks, their claim was that they were tired of the police brutality, right? The cops was just trying to reassure everybody that there were no police brutality, right? There's his, her, and the truth, right? So they said people could come and visit and witness their arrest and everything. To assure that they won't be beat. And the rest would be timed so that some adult members will always be in the house to care for the children and animals. Both sides agreed on these procedures. 2, those arrested would be released without posting bail. MOVE wanted a written guarantee. The city would only give oral assurances. MOVE would permit a weapons search and health inspection of its premises. Both sides agreed. MOVE would vacate its premises. MOVE disagreed with this. These provisions were labeled surrender terms by the press. They met the city's basic issue. But the 5 months of negotiations did not touch MOVE's concerns about its political prisoners. While Todd felt MOVE was so strongly committed to that issue that they would die for it, he saw it as an unacceptable demand where no resolution was possible, right? They're not going to leave the bunker, right? They're not going to give up or rest until they free their political prisoners. Nor are they willing to pack the guns up until the political prisoners are free. But there was an agreement on both sides, right? That shows that at some point, people were trying to, handle it more civilized. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Now, yeah, definitely, though. Definitely, it is true. Even if we had positive groups and stuff like that, they just always find a way to dismantle it, because why would you want a people so great and so special to get ahead? Why would you want someone like me and you to get ahead? Right, so of course they're going to dismantle anything positive, that's conducive for copper-colored people. That's just, and I feel like the craziest part with that is that it's the world we live in. It's the world we live in. Like in America, we do have the freedom to do what we want. But all over the world, there are oppressive people towards people of color. Right, there's people that's going to judge you for being black or want to hate you or kill you for being black. So I think that's just crazy overall. So you have a strong, solid point. No matter what it is, or no matter what the group is about, it will always be dismantled from the inside or even the outside by the outside entity that does not want to see copper-colored people get ahead. There's 15 million different things that this MOVE organization could have done, right? That would have benefited copper-colored people, black people, right? And then there's 15 million different things that the police could have done, right? Differently, right? But at the end of the day, this is why it's always going to be the divide and conquer tactic. Let's divide the people up. Create different groups, people don't know what to follow, let alone have a belief in anything greater than themselves. They'll follow anything that sounds good, or that's different from the normal, especially if they don't see that the normal is getting them ahead, so to say. And this is why people, even now, you got a lot of people who convert to Islam, like Lil Durk. I don't know what was his point of becoming a Muslim. I'm not even gonna lie. He just picked up the Quran and said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. No real reason, nothing to change his life or change other lives. He just picked it up. People are followers. People are followers. Where we at? So Move and the cops, right? They came up with a couple agreements, right? But the last one was for them to vacate. They wasn't with that. And the white boy, Joe Todd, who basically was saying the violence should stop, stated that, that's an unacceptable demand and you wouldn't be able to resolve this if that's what y'all offering to them. They're not going to move. And they don't want to leave. So this basically created a narrow view of what could be negotiated, and it may trace back to Todd's intervention goal to avoid violence. A conflict resolution ethical maximum suggests that when one's sole intervention goal is to avoid violence, one tends to support the status quo power relationship. That appears to have taken place here. Todd defined his intervention style as that of a message carrier. He asked each party what their position was and carried that information to the other party. He felt it was not appropriate for him to help the parties reality test their positions or to help them re-examine their needs and those of the other party in order to invent new solutions. He may have been encouraged in this approach by Move's insistence that only Move negotiates for Move. And Move finally broke off negotiations when the imprisoned member was beaten. The city obtained a court order to evict Move by blockading them and starving them out. Todd and others obtained a stay, and Todd tried to arrange a face-to-face negotiation session with Move leadership. The judge and the city manager. Todd and others obtained a stay, and Todd tried to arrange a face-to-face negotiation session with Move leadership, the judge, and the city manager. The barricaded Move leadership refused to trust an offer of safe passage to the courtroom where the negotiations were scheduled. Finally, they agreed to let their imprisoned leaders negotiate for the group. That session ended in failure, and the city began a blockade in earnest. Phase 3 had begun. Now remember, phase 3 is what? Phase 3. Oh no, they're going to let us know right now. So basically, by cartering off a predominantly black group, cutting off food and water, and fortifying the police positions, the city made Move a cause célèbre, resulting in a flurry of unsuccessful interventions to head off the clash. Radio personalities were suggested as interveners. Comedian activist Dick Gregory met with Move once before abandoning his efforts. Right? They had different people basically trying to come out and just talk to them to get them to chill. Different people, comedians, entertainers, wild different people, because they just was not hearing it. It wasn't jacking it. They wasn't believing anything that the police was saying. They honestly believed deep down inside that all of their members were being abused. All right, so the city developed a coalition, and it states that the stage was now set for a more successful intervention. It's facts, bro. The stage was now set for a more successful intervention. Move supporters approached Walt Palmer. Palmer was an established businessman and civil rights activist with many connections. His goal of intervention were to avoid violence and to produce a settlement that met the needs of both parties. He too defined the parties as Move and the city. He saw a major power imbalance. More pressure needed to be applied to get the city to bargain seriously. So now more people were starting to consider the organization as a self-governing entity, right? That they up against the city, like folks who's governing themselves. Why? Because they don't want to move. They're not trying to leave, right? To alter the power relationship, he organized a citywide coalition for human rights, CCCHR, and CCHR's religious and business committees organized these segments of the black community to bring pressure on the city. The community task force conducted major demonstrations, and the legal task force researched the snarl legal issues. A communications committee distributed information to the press and defined the situation as a human rights issue. They even brought the issue before the United Nations. Palmer chose Oscar Gaskins, a black civil rights attorney, to negotiate. Gaskins obtained a power of attorney from Move to represent in its negotiations. This gave him credibility as Move's attorney negotiator. So now they had a negotiator, an attorney negotiator. So in negotiations with the city manager's office, Gaskins, the representative, was the first intervener to negotiate Move's prisoner issue. City representatives, while privately agreeing that the charges upon which the prisoners were convicted were questionable, felt they could not compromise the legal system by releasing prisoners under pressure. Gaskins created a solution that met the interests of both parties. He suggested the prisoners be allowed to appeal their sentences. The Superior Court could then release them on their own reckonance. They were likely to be acquitted on appeal, and if not, most of their sentence had been served already. Right, so they were just trying to get them to come up with a deal to just let their people go so that they can end the violence, right? Their goal was like, all right, give them what they want so that we can end the violence. Everything could just stop. We could end all of this going on, right? Kind of encouraging their behavior, if you ask me, right? After breaking this impasse, Gaskins was able to negotiate settlements on the other issues. The city took the additional step of agreeing to commit themselves in writing to release, without bail, those Move members submitting to arrest. Move agreed to allow health and firearm inspections, clean the premises, and vacate within 90 days. They also agreed for Gaskins to represent them in court rather than appear personally to avoid confrontations. Right? They complied with much of the agreement. They cleaned the building, and then they did a health inspection, and they passed. Right? So now things were starting to clear up. Right? All because they was getting somewhere with freeing the prisoners. Right? Things were starting to clean up. Right? They was getting somewhere. Right? An agreement was starting to, it was starting to come together. Right? A controversy, however, arose over the charges. Move thought they would be dropped. Gaskins felt they would be routinely processed, and Move received probation. The district attorney talked about the seriousness of the charges. He started requiring Move members to appear in court, which Gaskins and Move felt violated the agreement. The DA changed his mind and felt he was legally bound to compel Move to attend court. So even with these members who were actively locked up, Move thought all charges would be dropped. They dropping all charges against these folks for coming out and having bang outs with the police, shootouts with the police. They wanted all charges dropped because folks is out there disturbing the peace with bullhorns and creating unsafe living situations or conditions for the people. Right? You want the charges dropped, right? You want to be spoiled and treated like that you're the highest in the room, so to say. If you're gonna explain it in that way, entitled. And when we go into the video, you're gonna hear it like a lot of folks, specifically cops and whatnot, was saying that, how we gonna let them kill a cop and then allow them to feel that they could get away with it. Right? But the same thing goes for black folks, right? How can a cop kill a black folk? Or how can they be beating on black folks in prison and get away with it? Right? Basically, using each other to go against one another. Essentially. But yeah, let's continue. So where we at? Yeah, the DA changed his mind. Even more difficult was the requirement for Move to relocate within 90 days. Many groups tried to find move rural retreats to practice their back to nature concepts. At one point, they were ready to move to a farm in New Jersey, donated by a black farmer. Right? The folks, they want to condone in this lifestyle. Like, okay, it's cool that you want to live like that, but like I said, how you're doing it, it's just not it. And here we have a black farmer willing to donate his farm to these people. But Move got the impression from the conversation with the farmer that he wanted to use them for slave labor. This is the 1980s, y'all. Slave labor, how? Y'all got all these guns, right? People know y'all for who y'all are, right? But somehow, some way, you got the impression that this black farmer just trying to give you land was trying to use you for slave labor. Now, one question arises: what in the hell do you want? What do you want? What do we have to do to get y'all to just chill out? Right? Because anybody in their right mind would have took up that offer. It's 1986, 1981, 1982. Slave labor was no longer even a thing. Right? We talking about Philadelphia. This is Philadelphia. You try to do slave labor on a black person in Philly in the 70s. They said the farm was in Jersey. So try to do some slave. You have wild black people knocking on your door. Even people who want peace. Slave labor in the 70s. What are you talking about? Right? They refused son offer. And no one interceded to rectify the problem. The city took out the strict position that move had to be out in 90 days, right? These folks is sounding like type of folks who they can't pay their rent. You hit them with the eviction notice, right? Now they on the internet are just telling everybody about how much of a bad landlord you are. Just trying to keep pushing different buttons and escalate the situation. All because they can't pay their rent and the landlord just want their rent. We just want y'all off the property because y'all bugging. Other people are saying it as well. Sorry, y'all. Or at least to do something to do it different. Right? So look, anyway, like I said, they took on strict positions that Move had to be out in 90 days. Move insisted the city should help them find quarters. Right? But someone just offered you a farm and you said no. While private groups suggested some locations, Move found them all lacking. Finally, the city solicitor was quoted in the newspaper that as soon as the Move premises was vacated, the city would bulldoze it. This incensed Move members who felt they could continue to use their property for other than residential purposes. Although Gaskins was available to argue Move's position in court, no one was available to oversee this growing collection of accusations and misunderstandings. Finally, at the end of the 90-day period, the judge declared that Move had broken the agreement. He deputized the police to forcibly evict Move and arrest his members. After allowing Palmer and a few others to make last-minute appeals for Move to surrender, the police moved in. A gunfight broke out, in which one policeman died. Other police and firefighters were injured before Move members were finally brought out the house. It takes us back to what I said about the story. Allegedly, John Africa claims that the cops killed their own peoples and shot their own peoples. However, the cops claim that you had several members in the compound shooting at the police, and that they were the ones who killed the police. With one cop even saying that one of the cops they killed was an ex-Marine. Right, so that's that part. It go all over the place at this part, right? It says one was severely beaten in front of TV cameras, which is we got parts of that video. Newspapers reported that the agreement failed because Move refused to vacate. when all they had to do was move to the black farm that was offered to them. Right? The black farm that was offered to them. So let's see, right? What else we got? Because I want to play the video. And the video is going to give us way more information on this. Like, the story just gets more interesting. So it says the CCHR's task was enormous. Many participants sacrificed over 6 months of their lives to achieve the agreement. Palmer's activist and street background gave him credibility and the ability to communicate with Move. He and Gaskins could cowhole, confront their positions, and reality tests. They interpreted each party's positions in a way the other could hear. Right? Basically, made it understandable for both sides. Their empowerment strategy was effective. The broad community attention forced the city to bargain more seriously. Its effect may also have gone the other way its effect may also have gone the other way also. The city may have perceived Palmer and Gaskins with their community backing as more able to assure that their clients would abide by their commitments. Palmer and Gaskins' indirect shuttle diplomacy style made reaching an agreement easier, since it buffered public officials from Move's outbursts. However, when a full agreement is reached through indirect negotiations, it may give parties an opportunity to disavow certain provisions. Jerry Africa, the one who was beat, a Move spokesman, refers to the written agreement as Gaskins' agreement, not theirs. Right? They just weren't settling, right? Not even settling. They just didn't want it almost would seem like they didn't want peace. Right? That they didn't want peace. Right? And they state the reasons for the failure may have been because of one or both sides scuttling the whole plan. Another possibility is that no one was in charge of the implementation, period. Interveners were too exhausted from the ordeal of reaching agreement to retain vigilance over this key period. In a situation where trust was so low and verbal dueling so high, post-agreement oversight is a crucial issue. Another problem may have been misperceptions of Move's decision-making structure. Most interveners, including Palmer and Gaskins, thought the Move spokespeople they worked with either could bind Move or would have to have the group in the Powhatan House ratify the decisions. Jerry Africa, one of the 3 political prisoners, states that Move operated on a consensus process that involved all members, whether present or not. If he in prison disagreed with a commitment made by Move negotiators in the House, then the commitment was not binding on any Move member. Whether this interpretation is true is unknown, but it underlines the need for interveners to obtain a clear understanding of the extent to which negotiators can bind their group. So the police were left out. Their ongoing clashes with Move set up a dynamic similar to 2 warring gangs. Like I said, just like gangs. Right? Making these connections, right? Like I said, the GDs, BDs, right? Malcolm X and his homeboys. Right? This was basically like the gang, the police. We know the police is a gang. And the Move, the organization, also be a representation of a gang. Right? After each rumble, one gang wants to avenge the wrongs from the last clash. Ultimately, police harbored resentment from the death of one of their members in the shootout. Nothing in the agreement or aftermath was designed to diffuse their hostility. Untreated police resentment may have contributed to the violence in 1985. Right, like I said in the video, the cop is going to say like he should have buried John Africa himself because the other cop got killed. Right, and then you have Move and them saying, well, they're going to bang out on any cop because they got their peoples in jail. Right? Real life destruction in the community. Destruction, violence, death, PTSD, war. Right? Remember, John Africa served in the Korean War. All he knows is war. I'm not going to say that. Right? But didn't have quite the most gentle upbringing. So all of that toxicity is manifesting in his cult. While MOVE and CCHR viewed MOVE as a political organization, the city responded with traditional law enforcement tactics. Unlike a criminal group which might respond to punishment and deterrence, a group that sees itself as revolutionary political movement might even be strengthened, attract more publicity, and galvanize support from confrontation and challenge. The presence of the media made it difficult for the city to meet MOVE's demands without losing face, even though privately they may have seen merits in MOVE's position. Right? Different styles of expressing conflict may have been a factor. MOVE's rhetoric was laden with violent threats to neighbors. MOVE's rhetoric was laden with violent threats to neighbors, public officials, and all who opposed them. One never knew what extent the threats were real. Some suggest the line between talking and fighting is different between street black and middle class black and white culture, which is a fact. To the middle class, angry words, heat, confrontation, insults, and threats will inexorably lead to violence. In street black culture, however, there is a clear separation. Talking is verbal, fighting is physical. A fight begins when someone within the context of an angry quarrel begins to make a provocative move. MOVE talked but did not physically provoke confrontation. That's their claim. I say posting outside with the gun say otherwise. Right? 10 MOVE members were convicted on conspiracy counts related to the police officer who was killed in the bangout. Charges were dropped against the officers who beat up Jerry Africa. Once again, freeing prisoners became MOVE's main articulated issue. Like a revolving door, they keep going through the same problems back and forth. Like having a real life argument. They arguing back and forth, back and forth. And there's no resolve. Right? There's no resolve because for every cop that gets shot, it's another person that goes to jail. And because these people can't be responsible for their actions, they're going to keep going to jail. And the more of them go to jail, then the more shots going to ring out outside in West Philadelphia, born and raised in the playground when they spend most of their days. It's crazy. All right, it's crazy. These groups, man, I tell you. It's like when we be outside, I used to remember back in the day, I know some people who did some crazy stuff, right? Even did some things to some females. Folks be screaming, free them. Free who? Nigga, you got what you deserved. And I'm going to say that with my chest out. Right? How dare you? It's just certain things you just don't do. Right? It's just it's a certain way you just don't live, right? MOVE, right? They dipped off to other cities, and Mayor Rizzo was succeeded by a moderate who in turn was succeeded by Philadelphia's first black mayor, Wilson Goody. Many MOVE members left Philadelphia and established settlements in New York and Virginia. In the early 1980s, the city, processing outstanding warrants, extradited MOVE members back to Philadelphia. A group settled on Osage Avenue in a house owned by John Africa's sister. During this period, MOVE spokesperson Jerry Africa pressed MOVE's position with anyone in authority he could reach. MOVE insisted it was subject to consent abuse of the legal process. It was being persecuted and imprisoned for its belief rather than actions. Right, and here are all the memoirs. All parties involved seemed to operate on assumptions about the others they had learned in 1978. The city and many potential interveners thought they had learned MOVE is an untrusty bargainer. MOVE will violate any agreement. MOVE is more interested in confrontation and settlement. That's what it would look like. Therefore, it is unproductive to negotiate with MOVE. MOVE thought it had learned. The city is an untrustworthy bargainer. The city will violate any agreement. The city is more interested in destroying MOVE than settlement. Therefore, if it is possible to negotiate with the city at all, it is only when it's subject to broad pressure from an aroused public, right? Basically stating that the only way these MOVE members could get what they want is if they pressure the neighbors, right? They pressure the neighbors to go to the city hall and speak on their behalf, right? Like advocate for them, right? You know, put it out there that they're tired of the mistreatment, that they need to free the MOVE member as well. Yeah, at the end of the day, the MOVE member, he going to jail for banging out with the police, right? They having broad day shootouts with the police. They don't want to take up no residence anywhere else. They denied the farm. Right, but then also the city don't want to give them much help. Right, you can't make these people entitled because they only going to continue. So what's going to happen? These bang outs going to continue. Long story short, what they thought was the best idea to put an end to it all is drop a bomb, drop a C4 bomb. Right, check this out though, right? This was really important, right? When I was reading it, I want people to pay attention to this. John Africa led a black liberation movement in the 70s, blah, 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 before he was murdered by the police. Right, so look, it says, for years prior to the bombing, MOVE was a thorn in the side of local authorities thanks to their anti-war protests and demonstrations against police brutality, right? The right way to talk about things. In 1978, MOVE was involved in a standoff that ended with a dead police officer. The 1985 bombing was a clear and vicious response from the Philadelphia police. In an era where police brutality goes largely unpunished, John Africa's story remains urgently relevant. So what does it say? What else do we got? Sorry, y'all. So we know he was born 1931. We know he was a little off, IQ of 79. Right, he was determined to be a slow learner. We know he fought in the war. Right, so look, is going to further elaborate on his association or creation of MOVE. Right, he worked with Donald Glassy. Right, they created the document. Right, Glassy said he was a gentle and warm and loving type person. Right, said his ideas is fascinating. Right, and with Glassy prompting John Africa dictated his views into a 300-page book known as the Guidelines or the Teachings of John Africa. It took a year for the anti-science and anti-technology manuscript to be complete. Right? And then they say, Glassy, remember, they said that him and John Africa separated over their ideologies. Right? Due to the ideologies, they separated. And this is why Glassy says. So Glassy claims that the poison came out of him. He was shocked. He had only seen Vincent in a positive light before. Right? He told him that people would work to support him. Right? But when he saw that poison, right? Example A. One incident saw MOVE members handcuff talk show host Mike Douglas in his studio. An incident in which MOVE members handcuffed and shot up a chimpanzee with a tranquilizer dart also enraged an animal rights group. So they advocating for animals, but look at what you're doing to the animals. So what is this? Is you really advocating for like what you shooting up the chimpanzee with the dart for? You supposed to be an animal rights group. You shot that bad boy up with some K2. They give that chimpanzee K2. Right? Look, he fell out with the housing co-op. And he subsequently ordered the housing co-op members to be harassed. Right? He was turning into a godlike figure. What did I say? That blasphemy. I don't know if anybody who is going to view this video or who is actively viewing this video knows anything about the 5%ers their teachings and what they were created and founded by, right? Blasphemy. Just like a lot of this other stuff, blasphemy. He developed a godlike image. They say the transition from Vincent Leaphart to John Africa took a year. And after a while, no one knew Vince. They only knew John Africa. So he started to do, you know, crazy, wild cult-like things, right? Like shooting up a chimpanzee with trank, handcuffing folks, right? Like, you know, bounded folks, blowing guns, fighting, creating trash and stench in the neighborhood, right? Just disturbing the total way of peace amongst the people. Now, real quick, right? What I want to go into real quick. We about to check out the official video, right? The official documentary from that time, right? It's about 50 something minutes long. But I would love for people to check this out because it gives us a clear explanation on what was going on at that time. I'm not going to play the whole video, but we definitely going, get into some of the good parts. Like I showed y'all. Let's check it out.
City officials leaves 11 people dead.
As a mayor of the city, I accept full and total responsibility for decisions made.
A black neighborhood is destroyed, and 61 innocent families are left homeless.
What is it, a crime to be black in this country?
Tonight, the bombing of West Philly.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTBS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is Frontline with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. 2 years ago this month, the Philadelphia Police, attempting to arrest members of a radical group called MOVE, dropped a bomb on a West Philadelphia row house. 11 people were killed, 250 people were left homeless. Tonight, our inquiry into the crisis. We ask what happened and who was responsible. We should note that the mayor of Philadelphia has refused to talk to Frontline, as have police and fire department officials. Our program is called The Bombing of West Philly. It is reported by Leon Dash and produced for Frontline by Martin Smith. And I must warn you, this program contains graphic language and scenes of violence.
What is it, a crime to be black in this country? I mean, is it a penalty? Is this the penalty for being black in this country? I mean, is Mayor Good, does he forget that he was once a black person too? Did he forget what the struggle about freedom is all about? I don't know where he lost his roots, but I tell you one thing, he better go back and get them.
We call it institutionalized racism, and that's exactly what it was. Because we were black, and because the institution has a way of handling black people, you understand, through the system, you understand, it didn't matter whether Wilson Good was black or whether Wilson Good was white. It's the institution. It's the governmental institution. This is the way we handle black people.
To sacrifice us to cover up their mess was not fair. I didn't do anything to these people. I didn't do anything. All I wanted was help. And just to strip me of my happiness was not right, was not fair. Where is the justice? Where?
This is a story about a feud between the Philadelphia police and a radical group called MOVE. a feud that spanned over 10 years and took the lives of 1 police officer, 6 MOVE adults, and 5 children. A feud that city leaders allowed to disrupt and finally destroy a neighborhood. This is the story of how it happened and who was to blame.
As a mayor of the city, I accept full and total responsibility for decisions made to in fact go in and to evacuate the Osage Avenue house. I stand behind those persons who made those decisions. I support my commissioners, I support my managing director, and I want the people of the city to judge me by that decision.
A little over a month after the May 13, 1985 confrontation, Mayor Good appointed a commission to investigate the incident.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Over 140 hours of hearings included testimony from the mayor, the city's managing director, the police commissioner, and the fire commissioner.
That you wanted to act in a comprehensive fashion.
In its final report, the commission cited the mayor for abdication of responsibility and gross negligence.
We have to remember that this nation has fought wars to prevent bombs from being dropped on its people in this country. And we sit by and allow a little city government to borrow a helicopter and concoct a bomb with high military explosives, C4, and drop it on our people? What kind of people are we? That's the issue.
When they begin to charge us, when they begin to throw stuff, we're going to take them on.
Yes,
okay?
you have to. I understand.
The origins of the MOVE confrontation date back to the 60s and 70s, when Philadelphia, under police chief and eventually mayor Frank Rizzo, tolerated a police force with one of America's worst records for brutality.
This is MOVE, and this is 309 North 33rd. MOVE is a totally revolutionary organization, and the purpose of MOVE is to exhibit by its activity the purpose of revolution.
The young blacks and some whites who joined MOVE came of age in this era, and they vowed to destroy the system under which they grew up. Their leader and founder was Vincent Leapart, alias John Africa, a freelance handyman who advocated the abolition of all man-made laws. In the early 1970s, about 30 MOVE members lived in a 2-story house in the Powelton Village area of West Philadelphia. MOVE's philosophy called for lots of exercise, a raw food diet, and rejection of all technology. The policemen who confronted MOVE found them difficult to understand.
These people are just neurotic. I mean, it's like insane. There was no principle. There was nothing behind them. Nobody even know what it meant, MOVE. I mean, they still don't. And so somebody said they got it because when they were kids growing up, every time they seen a cop, he'd say, "Move." So they called themselves MOVE. I mean, I don't know how they got it.
I want to put out one thing. Like, you may hear me use profanity, but it is impossible to describe a maniac, a profane, obscene, pornographic freak without using profane words.
Profanity was their biggest weapon. Demonstrations like this protest in front of a Philadelphia police precinct inevitably led to arrests.
You don't see something that's profane, you can't use a pretty word, motherfucker.
You have to understand that MOVE selected the time and the date and the place when they were going to get arrested. They decided that today is an activity, we're going to get arrested, and we go out and we protest and we'll do this and that, and who's going to get arrested and whatever have you.
Charles Patton was a Philadelphia police officer until 1984. As he told frontline correspondent Leon Dash, arresting MOVE members only passed the problem to the courts.
MOVE literally, I believe, tied the court system up. Just a mere fact, we locked them up for failure to disperse, right, and disorderly conduct. When they went into the court system, as a result of their actions, calling the judge misfit MF, etc., 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 the judge held them in contempt of court. Now, we may only locked up a few of them, but then the spectators in the audience, other MOVE supporters and other MOVE members, they would disrupt the court. Now the judge, in turn, would hold maybe 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or maybe even 10 of them in contempt of court. So you have one person on trial, and end up with maybe 10 being held in contempt.
What we do, we go to court and we start sounding the judge. Judge would come in, the court bailiff would say, all rise. And the first thing everybody sees is us sitting there.
Delbert Africa, a former Black Panther, joined MOVE in 1972.
Okay. Understand, MOVE went to court with a confrontation unit. This is what we called it. Because not everybody went to court or got arrested, okay? We went to court with a confrontation unit of at most 15 people, all right? Those 15 people had a total of over 800 and something cases. Well over millions of dollars of bail. And it didn't take no whole lot of us. Like I say, it wasn't but 15. Can you imagine that example? If everybody went to court and said, I don't care what you do, give me contempt. So what?
I have just as much right, and my brother got just as much right to speak as you. So what you doing arrogantly gaveling us down?
Delbert practiced his courtroom tactics in MOVE mock trials.
Understand this, our freedom is in jeopardy, and we will do anything to protect that freedom. You cannot put any restrictions on our freedom.
Mr. Africa, this is not a forum for your political view.
What is it?
Do you understand that?
So he had the folks in there basically like implementing like mind control, like premeditating basically how they would be, how they would deal with the situation, how they would represent themselves in court, or premeditating a court case, standing up for the rights that they think at this time they don't have, supposedly, right? If other people in the neighborhood are not okay with what you got going on, I mean, they're also not okay with what the police is doing, but it's like a double-edged sword. Both parties are doing wrong. So basically, what you teaching these young brothers, what you're doing is you're indoctrinating them in your doctrinization, right? That document, the guidelines. This is how you represent yourself in court, and I'm 100% for that. But again, it just takes us back to how they did it, how they went about it. That ain't it, Jack. That ain't it. Let's continue.
Do you understand that I was brought here because of my beliefs, because of my views? So obviously this is a forum for it.
I object. I think the witness at this point is badgering the judge.
In March 1976, one incident triggered a rapid escalation of hostility between MOVE and the city. MOVE claims the police killed one of their babies. Delbert and Jerry Ford Africa were there.
This baby was murdered. It had, been beat on the head with the sticks when the cop was trying to beat Janine down. All right, and to have that happen, I think it resolved MOVE members to the point where it said we ain't backing up.
We felt at that particular point that our organization had to make a statement to the city, to the world, that we were no longer going to tolerate the abuse and the killing of our membership.
We contacted city officials, state officials, everybody, look what you've done. I agreed to go because I wanted to help them.
Councilman Lucian Blackwell was one of several city leaders invited over to the MOVE house.
We ate, and we were just about finished when Delbert Africa read a note. He started to circulate a note. And when it got to me, I read it, and he said, the baby has arrived. It was then that I started to suspect something. And we went upstairs in one of the empty rooms. There appeared to be the body of a dead baby in a box. We didn't touch it. We didn't get close to it. We couldn't turn the lights up. There were no lights in there. So it could have been a baby. It might not have been a baby, but according to them, it was a baby.
Councilman Blackwell pressed the city to investigate the incident, but the city never took action. Over the next year, MOVE grew more militant. On May 20th, 1977, they showed up on their front porch armed with rifles and handguns. The city set up 24-hour surveillance. It was the beginning of a 14-month-long standoff.
If the police come in here with their hands, we'll use our hands. If they come in here with clubs, we'll use clubs. But if they come in here shooting and killing our women and children and our men, we will shoot back in defense of our lives.
When I finally saw him on the porch, I did some soul searching as to, what is this all about now? Because certain things were taking place, and I thought I was knowledgeable of what MOVE was doing, what they were all about and so forth. And all of a sudden, they appear on the porch with the guns and so forth. Because all in the past, they spoke on a peaceful revolution type thing and confronting the system in a peaceful manner. After the gun thing, I kind of say, hey, it's a new ball game now.
We didn't know the consequences of what we were doing in terms of spelling out step by step.
It's a new ball game.
People
started to look at them different.
Had a belief that everything would work out, okay? And we knew that day that we came up on that platform with them guns, that it would bring everything to the forefront. Because the city had been beating and killing us all along. But this demonstration would make it so that they couldn't do it in secret no more.
We're going to put the blockade in. We're going to shut off all utilities. There'll be not a fly gets through.
After many months and $3 million worth of police overtime, Mayor Rizzo tried to starve MOVE out. But MOVE held fast. Ultimately, the blockade failed. So did attempts to negotiate a surrender.
We're not about surrendering. To surrender is to say we're guilty. We're not guilty, we're innocent.
Many people now saw MOVE as victims of a racist city government. Mayor Rizzo watched as MOVE gained community support. Then, on August 8, 1978, the mayor, convinced nothing else would work, sent in the police. It would be the first full-scale confrontation between MOVE and the city.
The police will be in there to drag them out by the backs of their necks.
There will be a confrontation this time. There will be no barricades.
I don't know. It's up to them whether no barricades, Mike. They're going to be taken by force if they resist. No question about that. Children or not.
Some supporters came around to our house early in the morning saying, hey, man, the police is massing around the corner. They're coming up. We all, throughout the house, were awake. We gathered everybody together, the kids, children, and we rushed on down to the basement to prepare for them coming.
Well, when we got there, we moved into position. The ultimatums were given. The barricades were knocked down. The front porch was knocked down. The front window, basement window on 33rd Street was exposed. And I was right next to the window being right here. I was to the wall.
Two of them now. Two Dalian guns. Oh, they're shooting. They are.
Stay down! That chicken hit that wall right in there. You know it.
They fired first. They definitely fired first and fired a lot of sustained fire. It wasn't, the police didn't fire back until given the orders to.
Now here's where we have like the whole who shot first scenario, right? Cops say they did. They said cops did. Right? Nobody knows though. Nobody knows. But this cop right here, this ex-cop or this cop, current cop or whatever the case may be, claims that the MOVE members shot first. They shot first. Now remember, the other officer said they will be brought out by their necks if they do resist. If they resist. He said, this brother said, they went down to the basement to prepare for them. Right? Just like, you know, it's two sides to it. It's two sides to it. Right? It's two sides to it. But let's just continue.
Stay down! That chicken hit that wall right in there. You know it.
They fired first. They definitely fired first and fired a lot of sustained fire. It wasn't, the police didn't fire back until given the orders to fire back. Because what they were doing was they were just, they were scrambling.
car.
One police officer lay dead. 4 other policemen and 4 firemen were wounded. MOVE claims they never fired a shot.
I know the cops fired the shots throughout the whole thing. Ain't no doubt about it. Ain't no doubt about it. We didn't fire.
Who killed Officer Ramp?
One of them cops. And that's why they want to cover it up. That's why they want to cover it. Under the Rizzo regime right then and there, ain't no way in the world he would admit that his hand-picked Gestapo had shot each other to death. But them frantic cops admitted that they were shooting off rounds all throughout there, all right? Gunfire was going off for 5-10 minutes, all right? One cop, he's now FOP president, Bob Hurst, he admitted that he looked through our window, saw a group of women and children. He said women and children, unarmed, and he emptied his damn carbine at them.
Delbert Africa yesterday told me that you had seen some women and children through the basement window and then emptied your carbine rifle through that window.
No, absolutely not. Delbert knows better than that. What I seen was Chucky Africa. Seen him clearly coming right up to the window. And I seen him with that Mini Ruger 223, and I said that. And that's what I seen. The only time I seen the women and children is at the time they were coming out of the window, when it was all over. I never seen the women and children in there. You could hear them. But Delbert's right on that. I mean, I knew they were in there.
So the cops' claim is that when they approached the building, the compound, that they were already ready to fire, right? And then the African dude is stating that, you know, they saw women and children and unloaded on the women and children. So it's 2 stories, right? But in the clip here, you see that there's women and children coming out of the compound, out of the rubble. Right? There is women and children coming out of the rubble. Right? So could the MOVE members been the ones who let off the first shots? Right? Well, all I'm saying is supporting the fact that they could have been a radical group. Right? Granted, the police was on that type of time that they was on. Right? All this did was bring more destruction and more death and more PTSD to the people living in the community. Having to witness all of this. The children that endured this stuff. The women. Some who were pregnant possibly. Right? It's kids who were born after these situations like this, who had to endure that trauma. All because of a forced rebellion. A forced rebellion. Let's continue.
Were you afraid that you could hit any of the women and children?
There was a possibility.
How did you feel about the possibility?
Well, I didn't like that possibility at all. I mean, I don't like that. I mean, I don't like that, but I don't know who's firing back at me either. I mean, you don't know what's in the opposite end of that barrel. You just don't know. So you have to neutralize any adversary. Any adversary has to be neutralized.
A group of people came out, there was a pause, then the last of us went out, and I myself, I was trying to go out the front along with everybody else, when a cop in the back window put his gun at my head and said, "Bring your ass out here." And I looked, and I dug, I had no other choice, so I come out on the side on Pearl Street, and that's when the cops jumped up and down and on my head, in my groin, the whole bit, right in front of international TV. Okay, and these are the same cops that tried to say I come out of there armed.
So we don't, in the video, it don't look like anybody's armed though. I will say that. In the video, it does not look like anybody is armed.
He's hitting him, hitting him on the head. He's kicking him on the head. I have no idea.
A representation of the police brutality.
You make a mistake doing that, sweetheart. Your ass, they are.
As far as Delbert Africa and the frustrations of those police officers and having their leader come out there as defiant as he did after having slaughtered our own people, and then expect a society to turn around where no emotion, you strip it, they're sterile, and you're not supposed to touch the guy. It's a wonder the man ever walked. How in God's name can anybody just say, well, treat him properly, forget it, emotions are free, don't do anything, pick up your dead, pick up all your wounded, walk away, everything's okay, he did his thing, but it's okay, you don't do your thing. Well, you can put a badge on all day long, but you still have a little blood pumping in you. You still have the emotion and the frustration of seeing your own people slaughtered. And then this thing comes out here like a milk-fed quarterback, and he wants to be a star? A star? I'd have buried him. I'd have buried him. He killed somebody who he couldn't carry his jockstrap. A 30-year Marine. 2 wars. All the blood and everything else that this man saved in the streets of Philadelphia, and that garbage, that trash, because he had a cause that he couldn't even spell, wants to just blow everybody away and come out and say, I got rights. Got rights?
Yo, I'm
gotta
crying.
be mad.
He says son basically tried to fight for a cause that he couldn't even spell. And basically saying that he doing it because he got rights. For their rights. And he's saying that he would have killed them. He would have smoked them. He would have killed them. It's crazy.
And I know he's mad anyway.
3 officers who beat Delbert Africa were indicted and tried for assault. A Philadelphia judge found them innocent. Delbert and 8 other MOVE members were convicted of murder. Each was sentenced to 30 to 100 years in state prison. Over the next few years, MOVE disappeared.
Long live John Africa.
It was not until 3 years later that some fugitive MOVE members were discovered living in Rochester, New York. John Africa was one of them. He and the others had fled Philadelphia before the August 8th confrontation.
John Africa.
Federal and local prosecutors in Philadelphia hoped they could put MOVE away forever. They did not succeed.
MOVE sympathizers are celebrating the acquittal of their leader, Vincent Leaphart, also known as John Africa. Leaphart was asked how he felt when the verdict was read.
Nothing. I was asleep.
What are your plans in terms of staying in Philadelphia, in terms of trying to continue the MOVE cult?
It's not a cult. It's an organization.
Okay, what are your plans?
After the trial, MOVE members not in prison took up residence in a black middle-class neighborhood a couple of miles from their Powelton Village shootout. All was quiet for the first couple of years. But in the summer of 1983, a second MOVE confrontation started to take shape.
Our first
Phase
confrontation with the MOVE people really came about with the children.
First, the neighbors complained about children eating out of their garbage cans and about stray dogs, roaches, and smell.
Trash, and the animals were back there. In the summertime, they had raw meat back there. And
there were also stories of verbal and...
Now, this is a middle-class neighborhood they talking about, a working-class black neighborhood. Everybody you see in this video is black. People who care about their children, who care about the well-being of their lives. Listen to what they're saying about the living conditions that John Africa had his people living in. Mr. John Africa, Vincent Leaphart.
Physical attacks.
Mo Africa, he ran and punched me in the back of my head.
The neighbors expected the city to act.
Threatened to kill my 17-year-old son.
they threatened me, said...
What did they say they were going to do?
They said they were going to kick my door in, rape my wife, and kill my children.
This city did nothing to stop these people.
And all they got were promises.
They told us what we wanted to hear. The city officials, we will take care of this problem. Don't worry about it. Let's don't get nothing going until Mayor Good gets elected.
All of us, from all neighborhoods,
from all walks of life, white, black.
Wilson Goode was Philadelphia's first black mayor. His election seemed to signal a departure from the past.
Together can solve the problem facing our city.
We always know, right?
Black neighborhoods
Sometimes
that had
that don't
been
mean
politically
nothing.
written off had reason to be optimistic.
Sometimes
MOVE
a
had
black
different
member
ideas.
in the committee don't mean nothing.
A few weeks before Goode's inauguration, they boarded up their house and mounted a bullhorn outside. It was Christmas Eve, 1983.
And I went to bed, and about 1 o'clock I said, oh my gosh, I got a rowdy block, child, you know, I got a rowdy block. And you could hear voices, but then I opened the window, and the first thing I heard was, MF Santa Claus. I said, what the? It was MF Santa Claus.
Why did MOVE harass the neighbors on Osage Avenue?
Why did MOVE harass the neighbors on Osage Avenue? First of all, we did not harass the neighbors on Osage Avenue.
I met with
You're
them
gonna deny
last
the
night,
claims
some
and
of
the
them,
people
about 20 of
stated
them,
that
and
they were
said
harassed.
that you harassed them.
Well,
beginning essentially in a major confrontation on Christmas Eve, 1983, by setting up a bullhorn and announcing MOVE's position to the neighborhood for hours on end, keeping the children awake, and also subjecting the children to profane language, which they objected to.
Okay, now, you finished with that?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, what took place on December 24th, 1984 was
1983
was a confrontation that MOVE had initiated against the city of Philadelphia. Concerning the use of the bullhorn and the use of profanity. Well, it's unfortunate that our confronting the system in the way that we did was to impose on their rights, but certainly it wasn't. In fact, it was to ensure them.
I went over to the MOVE house and talked with Frank James and Conrad and Teresa and Ryan to Africa about what their reason was to have all of this confusion on our block. They said, well, we are trying to get our people who are in jail unjustly because of the Powelton Village incident in 1978. They said, we want to get them released. They said, if we make you angry enough as residents, as our neighbors, then City Hall has got to respond.
What led to the neighbors' complaints is
using propaganda to incite violence at its purest. Like, they trying to get the people riled up so that they can fight for a cause that does not entirely represent anything that's going to benefit them at all.
the position that we took, that we have innocent people in prison and we want them out. And our demonstrations to get our people out of prison. We talked on the loudspeaker, yes, we did. We told people that we were pushed to take the position that we're taking, that if they wanted to do something to eliminate the situation, to relieve it in some way, that they should be down City Hall complaining. We encourage people to go down City Hall and complain.
They said, we're going to put pressure on you until you put pressure on City Hall and make them let our people go.
That's
on
crazy.
Memorial Day of 1984, 15 Osage Avenue residents went down to City Hall to meet with the mayor.
When we had a meeting with the mayor, we all went out there. I know right then in my heart, I know there wasn't nothing he was going to do for us. Because he said to us, why can't you all deal with it? It's black on black.
Damn.
He didn't want to deal with us at all.
Damn. What? 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 Divide and conquer. Why can't y'all deal with it? It's black on black. The mayor told them that. The mayor. So the mayor even was putting these people against each other. The mayor putting black people against each other. Letting this cult conduct themselves however they wish. Disturbing and lowering the property value of a nice black neighborhood. Right? Reverse psychology. gotcha. Right? Destroy the community. Right? This is crazy. Oh.
Yeah, just like we was a bunch of bombs sitting there, and he was talking to a bunch of bombs.
That's the feeling you got?
That's the feeling I got, and I think we all got that same feeling.
That he was talking down to you?
You're right. He didn't even want to talk to us.
We were wasting his time.
We wasted his time that Sunday morning.
I don't know how to solve a problem at this point. I cannot, as mayor of the city, take any legal action in order to begin to deal with the concerns of a block.
I sensed very early that we did not have the expertise to do what had to be done.
At hearings held to investigate the city's handling of the 1985 MOVE confrontation, city officials described how the city dealt with neighbors' complaints.
Did you yourself or through your committee bring it to the attention of other agencies?
No, we did not.
Was this just too hot to handle?
I think that's a good summary for it, sir.
Mr. White, if this was too hot to handle, what help was available to those neighbors?
Mr. Bowser,
if the city couldn't help them, who could?
Well, you're saying the city. You're asking me.
I'm obviously not communicating, and Mr. White, I don't want to prolong this. Did you call anybody up and say, "Look, we got a bad problem out on Osage Avenue"?
No, I did not.
And someone had better do something about it.
No, I did not.
Failure to respond to neighborhood complaints was part of a policy of avoidance. Even when the mayor was informed that outstanding warrants on some MOVE members justified making arrests, the mayor chose to avoid confrontation.
I did not see that going in and making arrests of 2-3 people on misdemeanor charges would in fact solve the problem and would in fact do nothing more than aggravate the problem and make the problem worse.
With the city not taking action, MOVE continued to put pressure on the neighbors. In the fall of 1984, they went so far as to construct a fortified bunker on their roof, complete with gun portals and a new and larger bullhorn.
This is unreal. That I have to deal with this, And at that point, Cliff and us got together. We're going to have a news conference. Then we're going to do something. We got to get bats and guns and do something our damn selves because we were fed up by that point. Enough was enough. We had waited a whole year and watched them build this stupid bunker up there, dragging logs and trees all apart up the street to fortify this place, and nobody done anything. With the police right there, 24 hours a day, watching everything that goes on.
Is it a confrontation?
It most certainly is a confrontation, one strategized by John Africa years and years and years ago.
There's been talk that there are explosives in this house. Is there any truth to that?
That's only people's, hallucination because they have not been inside this house, so they would not know what is in this house. What is in this house is the strategy of John Africa that is very explosive.
In the spring of 1985, the neighbors, fed up, called upon the governor of Pennsylvania for help. Mayor Good was forced to take action. Like Mayor Rizzo before him, he turned the matter over to the police.
The final point I gave to the police commissioner was, take your time, prepare a good plan. We can then proceed with a tremendous amount of order.
On Mother's Day, May 12th, the police evacuated the neighborhood and told residents they could return in 24 hours.
But I was told to leave because you don't know what the extent of this is going to be,
What do you think?
I think, believe it or not, I think you'll have to kill all of them.
We want them out. And I feel that whatever has to be done, has to be done. Whatever means are necessary. And that's what I want.
Tom, this is Harvey. Look for Sambor and Company. They just left command.
By early Monday morning, May 13th, there were 500 policemen surrounding the house. Some of them had confronted MOVE before in 1978. This time they came more heavily armed.
If y'all come
At 5:35 a.m., the police gave 4 MOVE members named in arrest warrants 15 minutes to surrender. The police believed there were at least 6 adults and as many as 12 children in the house. When MOVE refused to surrender, the police opened up with tear gas, smoke, and water cannons.
Like they just having full-blown bang outs.
Where is this dude? Let's get back. Let's go, folks. Get out of here. Get out of the line, please. Get back.
The gunfire lasted for 90 minutes. MOVE wasn't surrendering. The mayor was not on the scene. He relied on TV news and telephone reports from his second-in-command, City Managing Director Leo Brooks, a former U.S. Army general. Brooks knew little about what was going on.
You could, I assume, from your command post, or at least when you went outside, hear gunfire.
Oh, absolutely.
Did it sound to you like automatic gunfire?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you know prior to hearing the automatic gunfire that the police would be in possession of and possibly using automatic weapons?
I knew they would have M16s.
Did you know they'd have Uzis?
I did not.
Did you know they'd have 50 caliber weapons present?
I did not.
Okay. Did you know that they'd have an anti-tank gun?
I did not.
Did you know they'd have an M60?
I did not.
While Brooks was supposedly in charge, the mayor was at home with some local politicians who he'd invited over to help him monitor the morning's events. From the mayor's kitchen, they could hear the gunfire.
I arrived about 4:30 along with President Coleman, City Council. I met State Senator Hardy Williams and State Representative Pete Truman. We sat there with the mayor for a long time. With the mayor periodically turning us and saying everything's all right, nobody's hurt. At one time he said that they're not firing in the house in response to the fact that we were a little worried about hearing the gunfire and rapid gunfire, which sounded like automatic weapons, and said that they're firing over the house but not in the house.
At any time during that morning, did Mr. Brooks report to you whether or not police were returning fire at the house or were shooting above the house?
My understanding from one conversation I had that morning was that the police were shooting above the house.
The mayor was misinformed. The police fired at least 10,000 rounds, not over, but into the house. At the same time, police assault teams were using powerful explosives.
You understood they were going to use explosives that would only put 3-inch holes in the wall.
Yes.
When was the first time you learned, sir, that explosives had pretty much blown off the front of the house of the porch area of 6221?
Sometime subsequent to May 13th.
Okay. And how did you learn that?
From reading news accounts.
Are you positive that you told the mayor that you were going to use explosive charges?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did the mayor seem to you to be paying attention to what you were saying?
Yes, sir. Because he asked me if it was safe.
After a morning of gunfire and explosions, a 10-hour standoff followed.
Exposing shit.
The police had prepared no backup plan.
This is crazy.
With MOVE holding fast, the police discussed alternatives, but did not consult any of the city's trained crisis negotiators. Meanwhile, the mayor went down to City Hall and in mid-afternoon held a press conference.
We intend to evict from the house, we intend to evacuate from the house, and we intend to seize control of the house. We will do it by any means necessary.
Mayor, do you have any plans?
We don't have any plans beyond, at this time, Russell, beyond taking control of the house.
Do you have any plans to go to the scene, to go to Osage Avenue?
No, I think it's inappropriate for the executive to be there. I have three very capable people there: Leo Brooks, Managing Director, Greg Sanborn, the police commissioner, and Bill Richmond, the fire commissioner. I don't think I'm needed at the scene.
So are you saying, Mayor, I want to understand you correctly, are you saying that Commissioner Sanborn can do anything he wants at this point, that you will not say yay or nay?
And then the pressure falls on him.
I'm saying to you that
it's so odd because the pressure is going to fall on this mayor because he's also black. He's also black. This is crazy. This is how you play. They played everybody against each other.
Commissioner is police commissioner, and he's in charge of police operations, and that he will be, in fact, listened to in terms of how he wants to proceed.
At 5 in the afternoon, a new plan was conceived.
And this is when they blew it up.
I told the mayor that it was going to be difficult to secure that area during the night, that the neighbors were clamoring to return to their homes, and that the commissioner wanted to drop a device on the roof to destroy the bunker and penetrate the roof.
After he said to me he was going to blow the bunker off, I paused, I guess, for 30 seconds to absorb what he was saying to me. And the next word I said to him was, does Mr. Sanborn know about this? He says, yes, it was his idea.
This, in my estimation, was the best way to go.
So the police commissioner thought that the best way for them to resolve this situation would be to drop C4 in the middle of the bunker, blow the bunker off. More trauma on the community, more PTSD on the community, more people having to suffer from this, right? Right? Like that's like stuff that's happening in the Middle East. They dropping bombs and stuff in the Middle East. This is America. This is supposed to be America. That's nuts. This is crazy.
Did the managing director concur in your decision to use the helicopter to drop the explosive?
Yes, sir.
Did he then call the mayor?
He did.
Did you tell the mayor that it was going to be dropped from a helicopter?
I did.
And you recall yesterday that he testified that his recollection differed?
Yes.
Are you positive you told him that it was going to be dropped from a helicopter?
I'm positive.
Director Brooks' understanding of that conversation differs from mine somewhat, in that he recalls having said to me that they were going to use a helicopter to do this. That is not my recollection.
At 5:27 p.m., without warning move, a bomb containing powerful military explosives was dropped. Expecting Move to flee, police stakeout teams took up positions in the alley behind the house.
Folks dropped military-grade explosives on the Move headquarters. Mind you, before Move even got there, this was a calm community. Parents worked, kids is outside, playing, enjoying themselves. Move came there. It was like a gang moved in. Right? All this blasphemy, this rhetoric, this cop killer stuff. All that, like, we already know we oppressed, but we over here chilling in our own bubble. And that just made it worse. And let alone the children who could have lost their lives in that bombing, or who did lose their lives in that bombing. They dropped military-grade explosives. This is America, y'all. This is America. But man, listen. This is a real long one, man. I hope y'all learned something from this one. Don't be a follower, man. Be a leader. Right? Use your discernment to be able to tell what's right and what's wrong. Because not everybody out there that's preaching is preaching the word of the Most High. Or just preaching peace. You're supposed to be pushing peace. That was the goal. How you end up toting Uzis and living with roaches and rats and shooting at the cops and upping guns in people's faces, right? And install a bullhorn in a quiet neighborhood, wake the neighbors up. And then the cops, of course, they know what they doing always. They always know what they doing, right? That's why it's like, when we let them play this game against us, they will always win. We got to find a way to minimize the amount of time that we use out of our own lives to partake in these games they play. And refrain from following anyone's blasphemy. Because there was so many people who were misled due to this man's ideologies. His beliefs. Misled. He developed a godlike image. Piss off. That ain't it, Jack. That ain't it. So I hope people learn something from this one, man. And if you tune in and you check out this video, man, I just want you to drop a like. Like, comment, subscribe. Definitely drop a comment. And make sure you check out the coloring books, man. The Copper Colors coloring books. Out now on Amazon. $10 a pop. Let your child bask in their creative side, right? Allow them to open up their minds and explore the world of creativity. It's a beautiful thing. It's the Copper Colored King, man. We out of here.